Happening now, breaking news, mission accomplished. After the U.S. and its allies launched missiles at Syrian chemical weapon sites, President Trump rushes to declare mission accomplished. But officials concede the Syrian threat may not have been eliminated. And UN Ambassador Nikki Haley says the U.S. remains locked and loaded. So which is it? Weak response. Some in the president's own party say the U.S. response to the horrific chemical attack was too weak, and that Syria's dictator is paying too small a price. Should the U.S. be trying to remove him from power? Secret recordings. CNN learns the FBI has tapes of talks between President Trump's lawyer and the former lawyer for a porn star and a playmate who have claimed affairs with Donald Trump. What does that mean for one of the president's closest confidants? And stormy hearing. A court orders Trump lawyer Michael Cohen to appear with his client list Monday, and the lawyer for Stormy Daniels says she may also show up in court, saying the forecast looks very stormy. We want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, President Trump calls Allied missile strikes on Syrian targets perfectly executed and quickly proclaims mission accomplished. But at an emergency UN Security Council meeting, the U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley warns the United States is locked and loaded if Syria uses chemical weapons again. And in a CNN exclusive, CNN has learned the FBI seized recordings President Trump's lawyer made of conversations with a lawyer who represented a porn star and a playmate alleging affairs with Donald Trump. I'll speak with Congressman Ruben Gallego of the Armed Services Committee and our correspondents and specialists. They're all standing by with full coverage. The Trump administration is calling the strikes on Syria a success, but is not ruling out further military action. Let's begin over at the Pentagon. Barbara Starr is standing by. Barbara, the smoke has cleared in Syria. What's the assessment?
Wolf, after a night of U.S.-led bombing, U.S. officials know that Bashar al-Assad still has plenty of chemical weapons in hand. It was a very limited strike. Nobody's predicting it's the end of him. A message from Donald Trump to Bashar al-Assad and his Russian masters, firing more than 100 missiles into the heart of Syria's chemical weapons program.
I spoke to the president this morning, and he said if the Syrian regime uses this poisonous gas again, the United States is locked and loaded.
Defense Secretary James Mattis in a late-night Pentagon briefing, not shutting the door to future military action, but also not saying what would lead to more airstrikes.
Right now, this is a one-time shot, and I believe that it sent a very strong message to dissuade him, to deter him from doing this again.
It was shortly after these horrific videos emerged of an April 7th chemical weapons attack in a Damascus suburb that the Pentagon began planning for military strikes. The target list: a chemical research center in Damascus and 2 chemical weapons and equipment storage facilities located west of Homs. After first light, as the damage emerged, the Pentagon said there were no reports of civilian casualties and all the military objectives for this strike were achieved.
I believe that we took the heart of it out with the attacks that we accomplished last night. I'm not going to say that they're going to be unable to continue to conduct a chemical attack in the future. I suspect, however, they'll think long and hard about it based on the activities of last night.
The strike on Syria began at 4 a.m. with a barrage of 105 missiles launched by the U.S., French, and British militaries. It was carried out by 3 U.S. warships and a U.S. submarine. The French also launched missiles from a frigate ship. In the air, 2 B-1 bombers launched strikes along with French and British fighter jets. One site, the Barza Chemical Research and Development Facility, is located in Damascus. Missiles made it past heavy air defenses without being shot down.
As you can see, it does not exist anymore. And we believe they've lost a lot of equipment, they've lost a lot of material, and it's going to have a significant effect on them. So I think the words cripple and degrade are good, accurate words.
But as Bashar al-Assad calmly walked into work today, it's unclear if he is hearing those words. Wolf, behind the scenes, the concern here at the Pentagon all along had been a response from the Russians, some sort of Russian military escalation. After the airstrikes, the Pentagon said they had seen no real response from the Russians. They'd seen nothing of concern to them, but still they are watching closely. Wolf?
So far, only angry rhetoric from the Russians. Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thanks very much. Let's turn to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. Jim, after the missile strikes, the president quickly declared victory, but was that a bit premature?
It may have been, Wolf. The White House is putting the Syrian government on notice, as Barbara said, that there could be more airstrikes if chemical weapons are once again used against innocent civilians in Syria. That's despite the fact that President Trump tweeted this morning, as you said, that it was mission accomplished in Syria. Mission accomplished, a phrase that was once used by former President George W. Bush in Iraq before that war dragged on for years. It was a sobering message delivered to Syria, backed by U.S. military might.
We are prepared to sustain this response until the Syrian regime stops its use of prohibited chemical agents.
While the Pentagon insists U.S. forces, along with Britain and France, achieved their objectives in striking Syrian chemical weapons targets, it's one of President Trump's tweets that may have misfired. Celebrating the operation, the president tweeted, "A perfectly executed strike last night. Thank you to France and the United Kingdom for their wisdom and the power of their fine military. Could not have had a better result. Mission accomplished." That phrase, mission accomplished, was a flashback to 2003, when then President Bush landed on an aircraft carrier and declared victory in Iraq, a war that continued for 8 more years. Over Bush's shoulder was a banner reading, "Mission accomplished."
Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
Even Mr. Trump's supporters are cringing. Former Bush press secretary Ari Fleischer weighed in on Mr. Trump's tweet saying, I would have recommended ending this tweet with not those 2 words. Asked about the president's confidence, the Pentagon didn't disagree with the commander-in-chief.
Last night operations were very successful. We met our objectives. We hit the sites, the heart of the chem weapons program. So it was mission accomplished.
Still, on a conference call with reporters, a senior administration official conceded the airstrikes may not have neutralized the chemical weapons threat in Syria, saying if this does not succeed, we will be prepared to act again, which means the age-old questions that come with every U.S. intervention have returned. How does the U.S. define success, and how long will that take? 2 weeks after Mr. Trump raised the prospect of removing U.S. troops from Syria,
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation.
Democrats are raising questions.
I cannot tell you what this administration's policy is towards Syria. 1 week ago, he was talking about entirely pulling out. That ended up appeared to give a green light to Assad, and you saw how Assad took that green light and ran with it in terms of gassing innocents, including women and children.
The other looming question is how to handle Syria's 2 biggest backers, Russia and Iran.
To Iran and to Russia, I ask, what kind of a nation wants to be associated with the mass murder of innocent men, women, and children?
Vice President Pence continued that tough talk at the Summit of the Americas in Peru.
Our message to Russia is you're on the wrong side of history.
Now, President Trump will face more of these questions about Syria next week when he meets with the Japanese Prime Minister down at Mar-a-Lago. But the president will be splitting his time discussing the fate of another rogue regime with weapons of mass destruction, that is North Korea, another foreign policy crisis with no easy answers. But, Wolf, as to this conversation about the phrase mission accomplished, there's, of course, another phrase that is always worrisome to administrations, and that is mission creep. Wolf?
Certainly is. A good point. Jim Acosta at the White House, thank you. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee. He's also an Iraq War veteran, a U.S. Marine. Congressman, did the president make the right call with this order to launch these missiles into Syria?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, number one, he hasn't really clearly outlined what the mission is, what the end goal is, how this all ends, what the follow-up action is. Number two, I don't believe he's got the authority to do this under the operating AUMF that we are working on in the Middle East in terms of fighting Syria. fighting ISIS, Syria is not mentioned in there. Specifically, we don't mention any state actors because that is an act of war. You have to come back to Congress. And this is a very bipartisan sentiment that I'm saying right now, that the president should come and talk to us before he launches these strikes. Clearly, what Assad did is horrible. There is beyond a doubt, I don't think anyone could disagree with that. But you need to come up with a plan. You need to tell us what the end state game is. And at the same time, we also can't be hypocrites. We can't be launching strikes into Syria and saying we really care about Syrians, but then at the same time, we only let 14 Syrians into this country as refugees so far this year. We need to have a full-throated approach to this. Well,
I understand your concerns, but did the strikes, and you've heard all the battle damage assessment coming in from the U.S., the U.K., the French, did the strikes actually change anything as far as chemical weapons capabilities on the part of the Syrian regime? Did it change anything on the ground?
I don't think so. Certainly the last strikes prior to these did not do anything. The airfield that they attacked was up and running within 24 hours. I think Assad's still going to have his capability. Not only that, but the alliance between Iran and Russia with Assad is just as strong. And anything that we should have done, it should be to essentially weaken that alliance, isolate Assad, bring him as a war criminal to the tribunal. And at the end of the day, bring some kind of peace to Syria. But this was not the way to do it.
The civil war has been going on, as you know, for 7 years, and maybe 500,000 people have been killed, and who knows how many have been injured. Millions have been made homeless, refugees. You've criticized the president for not having what you call a strategy in Syria. What would you like to see that strategy be?
Well, it has to depend what the immediate end goal is. If it's just to basically assure that Assad will no longer use weapons of mass destruction or chemicals, then we need to figure out how to basically take out the assistance that's coming from Russia and Iran, and the delivery systems and any other types of ways that they do that, including diplomatic and economic sanctions.
Congressman, are you saying the U.S. should engage in military operations against the Russians and the Iranians in Syria?
No, what I was saying is that we need to figure out how to actually separate them from Syria. And you could do that through economic and diplomatic sanctions over a long term with a lot of our allies in the world. Right now, we're not actually doing that. And I think that that's actually a strong weapon that we're not using at this point. Secondly, if we're going to involve ourselves in Syria, there needs to be an end goal. What is that end goal? Is it the removal of Assad? Is it the voluntary removal of Assad? What replaces Assad? What kind of government is going to be there? And are we going to actually occupy it to actually stabilize it? These are the things that I don't think the American public wants to do. But if you're going to even consider this, you need to come and talk to Congress. This is why we are authorized to do this under Congress to actually be the initiators of war.
At the Pentagon this morning, a top military planner, a general, repeatedly said the U.S. goal in Syria is to eliminate ISIS. It's not what he called regime change, meaning get rid of Bashar al-Assad, the dictator there. What's your reaction to that?
Well, if that's the case, then you should come back to Congress because you're attacking Assad, which has nothing to do with the authorization of use of military force that you're using to attack Assad. Essentially, you're waging war against another country. You need to come back and get permission from Congress to do that.
As you know, some of your Democratic colleagues, they've raised serious questions about the timing of these U.S. strikes. They've pointed out that it happens on the same day that the president pardons Scooter Libby, that his lawyer, Michael Cohen, was revealed to be under criminal investigation for the past many months, that the former FBI director was on TV talking about allegations of the president and prostitutes in Moscow. What's your reaction to that criticism that's coming in from some of your Democratic colleagues?
Well, I hate to disagree with them. The problem with what's going on here is that the president is so unstable and his administration is so unstable that anytime he does any type of action, we're going to have to question it. And that's a lack of, basically his leadership. It's a lack of him being a mature president that's causing everyone to actually question his actions. So in some regards, I disagree. I don't think this is specifically a wag the dog situation, but I understand why they think that, because his presidency has acted irrational. You don't really trust the decisions that are coming out of this administration. just 2 weeks ago, this president wanted to unilaterally pull out of Syria, and now we're bombing Syria. So, he's creating this scenario where people are questioning him, and it's because he is, acting irrationally and is not making good decisions.
But will you give him some credit for getting France and the UK involved, working together with the U.S. military in these strikes?
Well, look, any time you act, especially in the Middle East, it's always good to act, in as many partners and allies as possible. But the one thing that's most important is that I know the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of the United States says that he has to come and talk to us to ask permission to bomb a country that we have not authorized you to actually engage in war. I can't control France and I can't control Britain, but if he wants to continue to engage in that, he needs to come in again and ask for permission from Congress.
Congressman Ruben Gallego of Arizona, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
There's more breaking news we're following. CNN learns the FBI has tapes of conversations between President Trump's personal lawyer and a former lawyer for a porn star and a playmate who've claimed affairs with Donald Trump. And the lawyer for Stormy Daniels says she may also show up in court on Monday when President Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, has been ordered to appear with his client list.
The right sheets can take your sleep and your style to the next level. With Boll & Branch, the upgrade has never been more affordable. Every set is crafted from 100% organic cotton. They get softer and softer over time. That's why they have thousands of 5-star reviews, and even 3 U.S. presidents have Boll & Branch sheets. Try them for 30 nights, and if you don't love them, send them back for a full refund. Go to bollandbranch.com today for $50 off your first set of sheets, plus free U.S. shipping with promo code CNN2. Spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. That's bollandbranch.com, promo code CNN2.
Now to a CNN exclusive. The FBI has seized recordings of conversations between President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, and the former lawyer for porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal, both of whom allege affairs with Donald Trump. Let's bring in our CNN crime and justice reporter, Shimon Prokopez. Cohen is under criminal investigation, as you know. How important, Shimon, is this late development?
Well, Wolf, we know from the search warrants, based on our reporting, that this is an issue that the FBI is looking into, the payments. Specifically, there was questions about the Access Hollywood tape. There were other issues that came up in that search warrant that the FBI is asking questions about. And these tapes could potentially be a treasure trove of information for the FBI in terms of trying to find out the conversations that Michael Cohen was having with these lawyers about these deals, about these payoffs. What tactics was he using? What was he saying? There's always this idea that the FBI in this case could be looking into whether there was some kind of extortion, whether there were any threats made. Why he would record these conversations is a good question that we really, when you ask legal experts, they are all questioning, what is he thinking by recording these conversations? Certainly, Michael Cohen never expected the FBI to get a hold of these conversations. And now, they have them. They have not been able to access them now, and that's what's going on in a Manhattan courtroom now. They're trying to get access to them. But certainly, this could potentially create a lot of problems for Michael Cohen.
Now, Michael Cohen has been ordered to appear before this judge in federal court on Monday. What's that all about?
Well, it's really about this privileged information that he claims the information that the FBI obtained in the search warrants on his home, his boxes at the bank, his cell phones, his office, all of this information is privileged information, and that the FBI, specifically the U.S. attorneys, the prosecutors, should not have access to some of that information because it violates his rights, his client's rights, privileged information that really the FBI, he's arguing, should not have access to. However, the judge in this case keeps asking him, who are your clients? Tell us who your clients are that could be potentially impacted by this. And so far, I was in court all day yesterday watching this unfold, and each adjournment, there were about 2 to 3 adjournments all day, and the judge kept asking his attorneys, who are these clients? And the government's position on this is that all they know of is that Michael Cohen has one client, and that's the president. Other than that, he has no other clients. And up until about 4 o'clock, when the judge kept asking Michael Cohen's attorneys for the names of these clients, they had not provided her with any of those names. So now she said, okay, I'm giving you to Monday to do this, because the government needs to know who's affected by this privilege that you're arguing.
It's going to be quite a spectacle when Stormy Daniels shows up.
That's right.
In that courtroom on Monday as well. I know you're going back to New York. Right. You'll be there for us, Shimon. Thanks very much. Coming up, President Trump declares mission accomplished after the U.S. and its allies fire missiles at Syrian chemical weapons sites. So why does the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, say the U.S. military remains, quote, locked and loaded? Plus, a possible showdown as President Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, is ordered to appear in court. And the lawyer for porn star Stormy Daniels says she may also be showing up as well. We're now told she will be there. Stay with us. You're in the Situation Room.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got Ray Allen on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
If a team could make me an offer that I couldn't refuse at that point, once 2015 came and in 2016, it was like there's nothing really that enticed me that would make me say, I'm going to get off the couch and I'm going to really consider this opportunity, because my kids were much more important.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
The breaking news this hour, a sharp warning to Syria in the wake of the American, British, and French strikes on targets associated with Syrian chemical weapons. President Trump's ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, says the United States is, quote, locked and loaded to attack again if the Bashar al-Assad regime launches another chemical attack. Let's get some more from our reporters and analysts. And Matthew Rosenberg, do these strikes that we saw last night, early this morning, local time, really change the situation on the ground?
I mean, they changed it for Bashar al-Assad because now he knows that chemical weapons will provoke a U.S. attack, but nothing else will. He has a large arsenal. There are all kinds of weapons, barrel bombs, other kinds of fairly horrific weapons that have been deployed against civilians in this war. And, I mean, the message has been abundantly clear now. Use those, no problem. Just don't use chemical weapons. So that can very easily change the situation.
Yeah, he used chemical weapons recently and killed 40 or 50 Syrians, children included. But 500,000 Syrians have been killed over the last 7 years, mostly with conventional weapons.
And, I think the message is absolutely clear. If you use those, the U.S. is not going to attack you. And do what you will there. And that's a pretty clear message that's been sent to him.
There's been some confusion, David, about the president's strategy because only, 10, 11, 12 days ago, we all remember the president saying the U.S. has to get out of Syria, quote, very soon. And then all of a sudden, the U.S. is engaged in a military operation with Britain and France in Syria.
Right. Well, in the intervening days, of course, was the attack last Saturday and the images that came from that attack that the president apparently kept bringing up and again and again all week long. But, Wolf, you're pointing to a really important thing. What is clear here, there is no Trump policy as it comes to Syria. We're in a one-off kind of policy situation. If the images are horrific enough and can captivate the world's attention in a certain way that the day in and day out warfare cannot, then perhaps the United States and its allies will galvanize together and act. When the president said that, Wolf, I think the president was giving us his preferred option here. If you watch what he said on the campaign trail, this is a president who does not want to be involved so much in external affairs like that. He really doesn't want the U.S. to be mired in another war. He said it time and again. He felt compelled to act now, but as you see from the rhetoric, Mattis, I think, said this is sort of a one-and-done kind of thing. The president is adamant to not get mired in this.
The president has often said the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were a total waste in blood and treasure. He wouldn't have done it. He says that very often. He also tweeted this, Caitlin, earlier this morning. A perfectly executed strike last night. Thank you to France and the United Kingdom for their wisdom and the power of their fine military. Could not have had a better result. Mission accomplished. Maybe not necessarily those last two words, the best choice of words.
I think almost everyone cringed when they saw that the president tweeted that. And maybe he didn't even pick up on it himself. He was just genuinely saying mission accomplished. Of course, it brings back that regrettable statement that President Bush said in 2003, essentially saying that the Iraq war was over when it clearly was not. So I do think that was a cringeworthy statement, certainly a very negative connotation for a lot of people. But overall, besides that, it does raise the question of what is the president's mission here? Because the Pentagon backed the president up, saying that the mission last night was accomplished, that they did achieve their objectives. But the question is, what is the larger strategy here? Because, of course, the president does want to get out of Syria. He doesn't want those troops there that are fighting ISIS anymore. But how does he square that with that allied airstrike that he had last night? And what is his administration's overall policy going to be going forward? And every time that they use chemical weapons, if they use them again, which they certainly could, is he going to strike every single time? And if it doesn't work as a deterrent, what do they do going forward? So there are a lot of questions facing this administration right now.
Joey, let me get your thoughts on the other story that's developing. A CNN exclusive source tells CNN, as you know, that last week's FBI raids on the home, the office, the hotel room of Michael Cohen, the president's longtime friend and personal lawyer, had recordings, phone conversations between Cohen and Keith Davidson. Keith Davidson, the former attorney representing both Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, the former porn star, the former playmate. What is the FBI hoping to learn from these recordings?
Well, you know what, Wolf? I thought we learned back in the days of Nixon, right, that it was not a proper thing to record anything. But let's talk about many things that the FBI could learn. Just think about if you were a fly on the wall. But let me give you three, which I think are essential. The first thing, of course, is the nature of the relationship, right? A lot of talk as to whether he was acting as his attorney. Was he an attorney? Was he acting more in a familial capacity? Was he a business associate? What was that relationship? Are there any clues on that tape? Oftentimes I'll call, right, as a lawyer, and I'll distinguish in my conversation whether I'm calling because I'm retained and represented or, hey, I'm doing someone a favor. Listen, can we resolve this? Number two, let's examine the issue of intent. A lot of talk, right, about campaign finance violations. Potentially, right? Was he talking about, listen, we're in the middle of the campaign. I got to get this done. What can we do? What will you settle it for? That, to me, looks like he was acting, right, as a campaign surrogate. Therefore, do you run afoul of the campaign finance laws with respect to in-kind campaign contributions? Final point. Where did he get the money from? Is there any clue on the tape with regard to, hey, I have this home equity loan that I took, or I'll be funneled money through here, or my client will provide the resources? So I think there will be a significant amount of information gleaned from these tapes. Last point, Wolf, and that's this. The reason I think that he is on such that is Cohen and Trump on perilous ground is because even if, and we discussed the pardon issue, these are potential crimes that could be investigated and prosecuted also by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, my former office, New York, a global institution. They prosecute a lot of those crimes, or it could be prosecuted by the state attorney general. And that's perilous for Cohen because it goes to the issue of whether he could give up Trump to the extent that he knows something about him. And when it comes to your family and your precious children and the prosecutors are looking you in the eye, it's a hard choice just to say, forget it. Nah, I got this. Do what you have to do. Believe me, it's a very difficult decision. So we're on very perilous grounds as it relates to Cohen and as it relates to the president of the United States.
Yeah, just ask some of the others who have flipped and have pled guilty, the impact on their families in all of this. Everybody stick around. There's a lot more news that we're following, including the former FBI director, James Comey's surprising admission about his handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation.
Hey, it's Howard Beck, and I've got Kevin Pritchard on Bleacher Report's The Full 48.
They've overachieved wildly, and every single game, sometimes I leave the arena, I go, how did we win that game? But we keep doing it. You know, it's like we played well down the stretch in the last 4 or 5 minutes. We can be a tough team, and we lost close games, but we win our fair share too.
So check out The Full 48 now on the Bleacher Report app or subscribe at Apple Podcasts.
We're back with our reporters and our analysts. And Joey Jackson, I want to play for you, and I want to play for all of our viewers, the former FBI Director James Comey's decision only a few days before the election in 2016 to go ahead and release a letter about the Clinton email investigation. Listen to this exchange that he had, James Comey, with George Stephanopoulos.
Hillary Clinton's convinced that that letter defeated her. What do you say to her?
I hope not. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I sure hope not. But the honest answer is it wouldn't change the way I think about it. I mean, my hope, I didn't write the book for this reason, but talking about leadership, it was important to tell the email story because it's me trying to figure out how to lead well, that people will read that story and try to put themselves in my shoes. Try to realize that I'm not trying to help a candidate or hurt a candidate. I'm trying to do the right thing. And you can come up with different conclusions. Reasonable people would have chosen a different door for reasonable reasons. But it's just not fair to say we were doing it for some illegitimate reason.
But at some level, wasn't the decision to reveal influenced by your assumption that Hillary Clinton was going to win and your concern that she wins? This comes out several weeks later, and then that's taken by her opponents to sign that she's an illegitimate president.
It must have been. I don't remember consciously thinking about that, but it must have been. Because I was operating in a world where Hillary Clinton was going to beat Donald Trump. And so I'm sure that it was a factor. Like I said, I don't remember spelling it out, but it had to have been that she's going to be elected president. And if I hide this from the American people, she'll be illegitimate the moment she's elected, the moment this comes out.
If you knew that letter would elect Donald Trump, you'd still send it?
I would. In fact, that was a question asked by one of my best people, a deputy general counsel in the FBI, who was a very thoughtful and quiet person who didn't speak a lot. And that morning we were making that decision, she asked, should you consider that what you're about to do may help elect Donald Trump president? And I paused, and then I said, thank you for asking that question. That's a great question. But the answer is not for a moment, because down that path lies the death of the FBI as an independent force in American life. If I ever start considering whose political fortunes will be affected by a decision, we're done. We're no longer that group in America that is apart from the partisans and that can be trusted. We're just another player in the tribal battle.
There's no precedent for putting out information like this at the end of a campaign.
Oh, I've never heard of it before. I as I say in the book, I think I did it the way that it should have been done. I'm not certain of that. Other people might have had a different view.
Well, what about that, Joey? Is that the way the FBI is supposed to operate only days before a presidential election?
Not at all, Wolf. I think you'll appreciate this. I was in Buffalo at the time, actually, with a law enforcement group when I first saw this being released and, was like shocked. What? Is this really happening? I mean, listen, the FBI is composed of some of the finest people we will ever know, right? The reality is they protect us. They defend us. We go to sleep better at night because of what they do in our interest. But I think we have to keep in mind that a director of an FBI and agency is not in the business, nor should that person be in the business of influencing any election. Everything has a context. And the context here was that this was hotly contested. Now, you say you don't want to reveal anything. Why? The reality is that as a law enforcement entity, they generally don't release anything. Anything under investigation is kept highly under wraps. And so I think, again, reasonable minds may differ as to whether his conclusion was the appropriate one. I don't think it was, particularly when it was a nothing, when in fact, it was released and we got to learn the information. And so I think law enforcement is better when they function in that capacity of protecting and serving our interests and not when they function in the capacity of potentially, and I would say, influencing an election. I just don't think it was the appropriate call.
Caitlin, what do you make of Comey's rationale?
I mean, that's not the job of the FBI director to release something and say that someone's under investigation simply because you think that they're going to become the next president. And him saying that and him thinking that and making that decision is something the White House is going to latch onto as he continues this book tour, as he does all of these interviews. And they are going to use that as a talking point to discredit him. And even though that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the president fired him because of the Russia investigation, something he said that relieved a lot of anxiety for him, the White House is certainly going to use that to discredit him, and it could work among Trump supporters.
Wolf, I just want to say there's an inherent contradiction in what we just heard Comey say, right? He admits that there's no doubt that his thinking must have been influenced by living in a context where he believed that Hillary Clinton was inevitably going to be the next president of the United States. And he says that it's the death of the FBI to consider political impact and ramifications. Those two things can't coexist. So that, to me, is the most troubling part about his rationale.
Very quickly, how do you see it?
This was a terrible decision to make. Yeah. And it had a real impact. And you're absolutely right. They are going to beat him up with this. And you're right, too, where he's trying to say we can't live in a political world, but they do live in a political world. And there's got to be a way to reconcile that.
Lots to discuss on this and other issues. Everybody stick around. There's more breaking news. We're going to have the latest on the strikes on Syria and President Trump's controversial claim of mission accomplished. Plus, We now know the president's personal lawyer is under criminal investigation, has been, in fact, for months. But why is Michael Cohen known as Mr. Trump's fixer?
From executive producer Jordan Peele, Tracy Morgan is back.
What?
In a new TBS series that the New York Times calls a gritty, funny comedy.
I just did 15 years in prison. What happened to Brooklyn?
Starring Tiffany Haddish.
You gonna bust in there like the Kool-Aid man.
And Cedric the Entertainer.
You thought she was just gonna wait for you? She just got lost. She got lost on another man's bouncy house.
Don't miss Tracy Morgan's return to TV.
Second chances are a beautiful thing.
The Last OG. Tuesdays, 10:30, 9:30 Central. Only on TBS.
We're following breaking news, including exclusive new details of the FBI raids on President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. CNN has learned that agents seized recordings of conversations between Cohen and the former lawyer for porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal, who both claim to have had an affair with Donald Trump. CNN's Brian Todd is taking a closer look at what Cohen has done for the president over these many years. Brian, Cohen is known as the president's fixer.
He is, Wolf. We're told that virtually nothing Michael Cohen would not do for his boss. He's been known to threaten, to cajole, to cut any deal he needs to get his client out of some pretty serious jams. But tonight, the man known as the fixer seems to have placed himself at risk of going to jail.
All right, so before you knock each other over, we're all good?
Donald Trump's personal lawyer and confidant in serious trouble on several fronts tonight. Michael Cohen is coming off a tumultuous week, which included FBI raids on his home, office, and hotel room, and the news that Cohen has been the subject of a criminal investigation for months. As he prepares to follow a judge's order for him to go to court on Monday, Cohen could be on the verge of taking a major legal hit, ostensibly in the service of one man.
The next president of the United States of America.
Prosecutors say Cohen has told at least one witness Donald Trump is his only client. For 12 years, Cohen has been Trump's personal attorney, or as many call him, Trump's fixer. One former Trump campaign official says Cohen is a less cool version of Ray Donovan, Showtime's fictional Hollywood fixer.
No! Oh, Jesus, Ray!
But if Cohen's less cool than Donovan, observers say he's every bit as tenacious.
Michael Cohen is not averse to threatening people. He is a guy who carries a pistol in an ankle holster. He makes it clear to people that he's a tough guy.
From sometimes ruthlessly maneuvering against people who have damaging information on Trump to trying to facilitate business deals for his boss, observers say Michael Cohen consistently, doggedly displays the one characteristic Donald Trump values most.
There's very little in the world that's more important to Donald Trump than loyalty, and Michael Cohen has shown for more than a decade that he will hold confidences and that he will fight for Trump in the way that Trump likes, and that is to hit hard, to always hit back harder than you've been hit.
Cohen's legal handling of the Stormy Daniels case has come under scrutiny. He recently said he used his own personal funds to, quote, facilitate a payment to the porn star shortly before the 2016 elections. Trump recently said he had no knowledge of the payment, something legal experts say is almost unheard of.
It is extraordinary, and I would tell you that probably 99.9% of the lawyers in America would never even contemplate doing this.
Cohen tells CNN his legal handling of the Daniels case has been solid, airtight, and that he believes it's Daniels who's now liable for millions in damages based on her conduct.
I think the entire thing was either reckless, naive, or completely incompetent.
Crisis communications specialist Michael Rubin says it was a bad idea to believe paying Daniels off would make her go away. What should Cohen have told Trump?
Tell him this isn't going to work. That's what he really should have done. There was nothing they could have done to make this go away. So dealing with it honestly is pretty much the only choice they have.
Cohen defends himself on that score as well, telling us that he hopes Daniels and her attorney are enjoying their 15 minutes of fame, that he thinks that will diminish significantly when a judgment is entered against her. As to the allegations of an affair, Mr. Cohen reiterated his strong denial of the affair on several occasions. Wolf?
Brian Todd, thanks for that report. Coming up, breaking news. After the U.S. and its allies fire missiles at Syrian chemical sites, President Trump declares mission accomplished. But his UN ambassador says the U.S. remains locked and loaded. And the president's lawyers ordered to appear in court. As CNN learns, the FBI has recorded conversations between him and the former lawyer for a porn star and a playmate who claimed to have had affairs with Donald Trump.